Former Defence Secretary Liam Fox promised that around 6,000 or 7,000 soldiers would be moving to Scotland, but following today's announcement, the actual figure is more like 800 compared to the baseline figure in 2011. Some barracks will be closing, but others will be staying open. They include RAF Leuchars, which will become an army base. Around 1,200 soldiers will be moving in there in 2015, including the Scots Dragoon Guards and a REME Battalion, both currently part of 7 armoured brigade in Germany. By 2020, there'll be just shy of 4,000 soldiers based in Scotland, an increase of more than 800 since 2011. But when the promise was thousands, that's left many disappointed, and Shadow Defence Minister Jim Murphy described it as a real blow for Scotland. But the Westminster Government says the number is right, taking into account recent defence cuts in personnel.
Well, the original numbers were based on a regular army of around 94,000 troops. We're now planning on a regular army of about 82,000 troops. So given that change, of course, there's going to be some adjustment in the numbers.
The people of Leuchars will be breathing a sigh of relief. After months of uncertainty, they now know their RAF base won't close. It's being handed over to the army in 2015, and the Scots Dragoon Guards, a REME Battalion and a Provost Company are moving in, around 1,200 soldiers in all, plus their families. Dreghorn Barracks in Edinburgh has also been saved. 3 rifles will move in there in 2014, and HQ 51st Brigade will move to Redforth Barracks next year. The Royal Marines base at Arbroath is also being saved, but some underused bases are closing. They include Craigiehall in Edinburgh, which is being sold off, as is part of Forthside and part of Redforth Barracks, and plans for an HQ at Kirknewton have been scrapped.
If we think back 2 or 3 years ago, we were getting a suggestion that Kinloss, Lossiemouth, Leuchars would all be closed. They're not. These bases are proceeding and with new life and vigour.
The government says changes to the armed forces laydown in Scotland will give soldiers more certainty about where they'll be based, and it will give their families stability. And for the first time in many years, more than half of the Scottish infantry based in Scotland. Well, earlier I spoke to the General Officer Commanding for Scotland, Major General Nick Eeles, and I began by asking him what he thought of the number of troops who will be moving back to Scotland.
Well, I think it's understandable. A lot has happened since July 11 and those announcements. The army is reducing by another 12,000 or so, the regular army. So there's far fewer people to bring back from Germany and base in the United Kingdom. I think actually his uplift in service numbers was 2,000 at that stage. We're still going to see an uplift across all 3 services of 600 and an increase of 800 army personnel in Scotland. And given the reductions across the army as a whole, I think that that's a pretty good result.
And now the RAF has been based at Leuchars for many years. It has a long history there. Why move the RAF out and move the army in?
Well, I can't comment on why the RAF are moving out. That's a question for the RAF or indeed ministers to answer. What I can say is that Leuchars, I think, is a very attractive base. There are great facilities there. Before the army moves in, we will do a large refurbishment programme there, which will make sure that those facilities are absolutely up to standard for the units going in. And it enables us to bring more army personnel into Scotland.
And what about the announcement that the combat units in Scotland will be commanded by a brigadier based in Scotland for the first time in many years? How significant is that?
I think it's very significant for those units. I think one of the frustrations of our command and control arrangements in the recent past is that units have found themselves commanded by senior officers, often who are based in completely different countries. So some of the units in Scotland have been commanded from Germany, others from Northern Ireland, and several from brigadiers based down on Salisbury Plain. And that distance, despite modern communications, is not good for our people. It's far better to have commanders close to the units and the people and the families that they're in charge of, because that's how they understand what the real issues are for those people and their families and how they can really make a difference and get the right decisions for them.